right, hey everyone. We're going to do another one of my favorite compare and contrast kind of videos here for Australia Mountain Culinary. As you know, when we make dough, dough's pretty simple. It's flour, water, yeast, and in most recipes a little bit of salt. But one thing you want to control, of course, is the amount of yeast you use, and also what's also critical is the temperature of your water. So for compare and contrast here, we're going to do a couple different water temperatures, and we're going to do a couple different yeast amounts. So what I've got here in front of me is just scaled out enough to make about 1.5 pounds of dough, flour, salt, and then I've got either a low amount of yeast, about 2.5 grams, or a high amount of yeast, about 5 grams, so about twice the yeast. And then for water, we're going to use 50-degree water and probably close to about 100-degree water. Now, if we were going to do this correctly, we would actually, we've got our thermometer here, our instant read. We check the room temperature, we check the bowl temperature, the flour temperature, the water temperature, and we'd actually calculate out exactly what we need, with the only variable that we can change is the water temperature. But this is really what we're going to do, is we're going to put the 4 dough balls together. We're going to put them side by side, and we're actually going to time lapse and see in the same amount of time. What we should see is differences in the rise time. The cold water with the low yeast all the way up to the warm water with the high yeast, we should see a very dramatic difference in how fast that dough rises. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab the first one here, which is our low amount of yeast. I've got some cool, about 50-degree temperature water. I'm just going to put it in the work bowl, get it to come together, and we're just going to run through and do all 4 of these and cut straight to what they look like as they go. Of course, what I'm going to do, as usual, we're still going to, even though this is pretty much instant yeast, it dissolves pretty well. It's always a good idea to throw that in the water and give it a little stir first. Always want to make sure you don't have your yeast kind of caught in one part of the dough and not the rest. And a little bit of yeast trying to hang on there. Mainly because the water is cool, so the yeast is not wanting to dissolve real well. And see if we can get this in here without making a mess. Not too bad. Going to use just a regular standard mix time, about 3 minutes on speed 1. Make sure it cleans up well, cleanup stage, and then a couple more minutes on speed 2. If we were really concerned about making great dough here, we'd pull it out, we'd check for a gluten window, make sure it was to the optimal development, and then we would bulk proof it for about an hour. Welcome back. I love time lapse. I love the magic of technology here. So our 4 different kinds of dough, well, really it's one kind of dough 4 different ways. It's all done here. It's kind of taking over the pan here. I deliberately put them all in one pan just so we didn't have to worry about, well, one's here, one's over there, how big is each one. So let's take a look here. We'll get this out of the way. Try to be gentle so I don't deflate anything. What we have is our 4 doughs. So we have, what did we work out? About 1.5 pounds per, so we got about 6 pounds of dough here. And lo and behold, it behaved. It did exactly what I expected it to, so yay, we have a good video for the college. The first one here in this corner was the low yeast, low temperature water. This is the high yeast, low temperature water. So visually you can see smallest of the 4, next smallest of the 4. That's what we expect. Water makes a big difference here, water temperature. On the closest to you row here, we have the high temperature, which the high temperature was about 100 degrees. So we used 50-degree water, 100-degree water, 2.5 grams of yeast, 5 grams of yeast are the two dimensions here. So high temperature water, low yeast, still, went crazy, right? It proofed well, it bulk fermented well. So these two here, same amount of yeast, just different water temperature. Water temperature, you can see, makes a dramatic difference in the product, more so than how much yeast we used. In this final corner here, we had the high temperature, 100-degree water, high yeast, 5 grams of yeast. This one pretty much took over, and if these had been spaced out better, or we had more room in a pan, bigger pan, this probably would have looked even larger than this one. Here visually, being here in the room with the dough, I can definitely see, 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of how much fermentation we got. So what we've proven here, what we see here on camera, what you now see as opposed to just reading in a textbook, reading formulas, talking about yeast and water temperature and all this, is they both make a difference. We definitely can control our fermentation rate based on how much proof time we have. This went a little over an hour, so depending on how slow or how fast you want your product to ferment, I have pizza dough recipes that I ferment in the fridge. Very, very slow, 38 degrees, 37 degrees, very slow fermentation. So, depending on what you want to do, you now got some tools of the trade. We'll see you next time.